Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe Digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. On We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening, and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the deep, deep South. Mississippi, the great state of Mississippi, has less than 3 million people in terms of populations. 45% of the population in Mississippi is African American. When you add in other races and ethnic groups, Mississippi has a minority population that's approaching 50+1%. And so people are afraid in Mississippi that things are going to change. And so we're here at the broadcast studios talking about the kinds of things and the kinds of individuals that bring the fight to try and maintain the status quo, to make absolutely certain that the black man in Mississippi and all across this country never gets to become a full first-class citizen, enjoying all of the rights and privileges that go along with being a full first-class citizen. And so we're going to talk about these things, and we want you to know that we're broadcasting live in over 139 countries. We're being seen on Facebook, on Roku TV, on our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, also on YouTube TV. You can call in tonight and join in the discussion from wherever you are in the world by calling 800-492-5186. We'd love to have your input. There are some serious challenges out here in the world today, and they're not just in Mississippi. What's going on in Mississippi just echoes and reflects what's going on in America. So these topics, while they emanate from Mississippi, they apply to the rest of the world. As always, my co-host is Dr. Eldridge Henderson, a renowned author and a speaker that's sought after all over this country. Dr. Henderson, it's good to have you in the studios this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. I'm very pleased to be here again.
Well, we're going to jump right into it. We were talking before the show about a young African-American male that got shot 40-something times. You call it police murder. Is that correct?
That's exactly what it was.
Why you call it that?
Well, because there's a systematic design, and the history will prove it, that the military and the police, when they have what we call civil disturbances, make a strong effort to set a tone where the people they are fighting, which are usually black, to know that they are not respected, they are not going to be given legal rights, and they will kill them for any reason, good or bad. And they do it very consistently, and it has always happened in the history of America, not only in America, but worldwide. Whenever there have been an uprising for black people, in Asia, Africa, America, the military and the police did their best to kill a large number of those people. And very seldom would their governments investigate and punish those police when they knew they did it deliberately, without provocation.
And this happens time and time again throughout the entire country.
Throughout the country and the world, when black males are specifically concerned. They always destroy the male first. And once you destroy the male and give something to the female that's going to help them survive, you get them in a position where they are dependent on you. And when I say you, I'm talking about the human enemies of mankind that devise these strategies to eliminate the so-called former second majority group in America to the European Americans.
Why is it that the strategy of attacking the black male has been so successful? And what is the end result of that?
Well, they've been very successful because the black male or black people in America are the only people in the world that have not fought the European Americans, the only group. All the other groups in Haiti, in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe, fought the European Americans and what I call the Americans, white males, when they violated their rights. But black folks have always prayed over it and expected to integrate with the human enemies of mankind versus become independent and pool the resources and gain respect.
It's difficult for you to gain respect in someone else's house.
Very much so.
And so what you're saying is black folks have to have their own identity, and they have to have their own ability to create jobs and opportunities and provide their own health care and things of that nature if they want to be successful.
That's exactly right. And they have done that in the past. Prior to Reconstruction, during Reconstruction, and after Reconstruction, probably around 1875 to about 1950. Blacks had all kinds of businesses because they were segregated from white society. And I told you many times, you have read about it, they had hospitals, hotels, bus companies, railroad facilities, all kinds of business. Matter of fact, in Mississippi, they had 11 banks, had credit unions, they had 5 or 6 hospitals that were functional, and on and on and on, movie theaters. And now you can't find a major hotel where you have a black person as the 100% owner. You can't find no more than one golf course, I think, where you have 100% ownership of blacks, and it's not doing very well. And that's because we believed that it's always best to integrate with the people that you love that hate you. Now that is amazing, where if someone going to beat you across the head and you're going to go and fight with them to be beat again. And this is historical. They've done the same thing in Africa. They did it in Asia. And the black man say, I want to be like the Europeans. I want to have straight hair. I want to have a light complexion. So they bought wigs. They bought all kind of chemicals to make themselves white. And they say, we want to be just like our bosses. And that was by design also, because the European Americans and the Europeans worldwide told the black people and others, we are the chosen one. We are the Christians. We are the Bible-toting hypocrites. Of course, they didn't say that part. And we know Jesus. You need to know Jesus. And that started the trouble.
Yeah.
That Jesus thing caused a lot of trouble. It still does.
Well, you know, I was watching Jesus of Nazareth on the TV about a week ago. And I go to church every Sunday, and I consider myself to be a Christian. I'm a man of faith. I study under Bishop Ronnie Crudup at New Horizon Church, a good man. But when I watched that movie and all of the characters were white, it did something to me. It just didn't resonate well in my soul. That here we are in Africa, and all of the characters, all of the disciples, Jesus, Mary, everybody is just lily white. And I said to myself, I said, this can't possibly be. Why would anyone continue to spread that image in this day and time when they know that that could not possibly be the case?
What do they care about facts? When you write history that's going to promote your interests and desires. You care nothing about facts. And if you read the Bible, it will contradict a lot of that stuff because it says there are certain people that had certain colors, had woolly hair, had brown skin, and that all kinds of people were in that area, Arabs, blacks, no Europeans until probably around the 800s, when a few started gradually coming into the area. But 90% were Africans, about 10% were those Muslims and Asians, which a lot of those were black, and they probably, if you look at history, started assimilating like the Southerners did here in the South when you couldn't have slavery after, I believe, 1808, I believe. They started creating their own people. And as you know, when you start creating another race, that has nothing to do with the creation of God. That's a man-made creation, and you do that so you can promote your lineage through your children from the outside, from the so-called natives.
And so here in Mississippi, we've had some notorious racists, some staunch segregationists, and we've had people that just were overt in their action. Richard Barrett comes to mind as one of the individuals that just overtly hated black people and stood on every stump that he could find to talk about the black man in Mississippi and that he was worthless and no good and not to be trusted. And today I had the opportunity to listen to a show over on WYAB and was listening to Brother Kim Wade over there. I know Kim. Kim's a good guy. But he was tearing down black people worse than Richard Barrett did back in his day. And so the black man has been under attack and been recreated to a point that he feels that his mission is to tear down other black folk. And this continues. We've had this in this state too long. Byron D. LeBecq, when they asked him, did he kill Medgar Evers? His words were, no, I didn't kill him, but the nigga show is dead, ain't he? And so we've had that kind of stuff going on in Mississippi for far too long. And so not only is the black male being attacked by whites and racist people all across the country and being shot down and murdered in some cases, as we talked about in that young man, but black folk are tearing down the black male as well. Dr. Henderson, we have in Jackson a city that has had 85% black population, 85%. It has a city council that's made up of 7 wards. 5 of those 7 wards are African Americans. It should be 6 African Americans in a city that's 85% black. Should be 6 African Americans on that board. But we got 5. And each time in the last 3 out of 4 years, these 5 African American council people have elected a white person as their president, as their leader. How is that possible? How could African Americans of 40 years old, having benefited from all of the struggles that went on in your generation and my generation, how could they possibly elect a white conservative Republican as president of the council in a democratic city? How is that possible?
Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a democratic city. That's just a term, a word that is used. We have no democracy in America, none whatsoever. And when you can have a situation that you just described, you've got to understand, Mr. Garrett, that the European Americans have always controlled 100% of the cities, the counties, in the government, in America. So as they move towards being diminished in population with the blacks getting the right to vote, getting what we call a so-called good education where they want to be involved in civic affairs, the white man knows that now we are going to have to step back a little bit. And in order for us to remain in control, we're going to have to train some people to talk like us. So that's what they do. They go and recruit. I know what I'm talking about. I used to be a political consultant in Georgia and other states. They go and recruit their own blacks. they fund them, give them campaign money, after they find out who their opponent's going to be. If there's a strong black man or black woman that has a sense of independence, they're going to find one, and they're going to make sure this person is not real strong economically. And they're going to build him up, finance his campaign, and he or she then will declare a candidacy for that position, and in most cases they win, because it takes $75 to $200,000 or $300,000 to win certain races in cities and counties in America.
Well, we're going to change this strategy. The strategy that we have been using to empower black people has not worked, because we've empowered people who, once they're in office, they support our adversaries and the opposition. And let me just make this clear. This is about economics, the power of the economics, the dollar. The Europeans lost over 700,000 lives in the Civil War trying to maintain slavery. They're spending a lot of money today trying to make absolutely certain that the black man does not rise in the South. We say the South will rise again, but the adversaries wants to make absolutely certain that if it does rise, it'll rise to the same standards with the same people in power that it had back in the days of slavery. And so our strategy is not working. Now, you offer up solutions and strategies in terms of how we're going to change and correct this outcome, because it's not looking good. We're in the fourth quarter, and it doesn't look good. We're way behind. And so if we don't come up with a strategy that we can implement immediately, we're going to lose the black man. And when you lose the black male, you lose the black race, because no one else can produce a black person. And so if you destroy the male, then the race dies. It becomes extinct. It goes away. And so fortunately in the South, black males continue to populate and they continue to grow. In this condition, regardless to what the oppression is, black folk continue to have babies, black folk continue to gain numbers, and Mississippi and America will be brown by 2030. That is going to change the whole democratic process. Democracy will not work when Europeans are the minority in a given region.
Well, that is a fact, and that's what most of the Europeans are thinking about, and I guarantee you they have plans to curtail this kind of activity. But black people in America and the world shouldn't worry about what the white folks are thinking. Black people need to start thinking about three things: loving self, pooling their resources, and building an economic base where they can include their smartest, the best people, and start working in education and training, economic development, religion, politics. Train their own people. Find them where they are. Get them initiated in a black perspective, and let them know that there's three things, young people, old people, black people, that you got to do. One, you have to love yourself first. Then you have to look at your deficiencies and learn the skills you need to learn so you can be dependent on self and not others, and have the skills to make a livable wage. That's number one. Number two, you look at your personal self-development and see where you are today and where you are 5 or 10 years from now, and teach your children to do the same. To get an education, get a good training, certification, skills in certain areas. And you didn't hear me say one time about every black person going to college. That is not necessary. Every black person, though 18 or older, ought to have a livable wage skill. We have too many black folks in college that waste their time and in senior colleges now, and finish with a degree in 6 to 8 years, and they're still working at a minimum wage plus a quarter job and not in management positions. Only a few in the 10% of blacks If you look at most stats, it's about 1% of that 10% that's in high management jobs in other folks' business. Very few blacks in America and the world have their own multi-million-dollar business. There are only a few throughout the world, and that's because we cause our own problem by hating ourselves. When you train yourself, train your children, then you have the independence, Mr. Socrates, where you can get involved in community affairs. You can create your politicians. You can create the preachers for your religious denominations. You can create your corporate leaders by training them in another environment, starting in the church. That's what you have to do, and that's what he did in all those periods that I mentioned, even during slavery, during Reconstruction, and after slavery until about the 1960s.
Hold your point there, Doc. We're getting ready to go to station break. We're broadcasting live right here in the We Believe Digital Broadcast Studio from Jackson, Mississippi. We're going to take a station break, and we'll be right back.
Socrates Garrett ENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. Socrates Garrett ENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Welcome back. This is Socrates Garrett Live, coming to you from Jackson, Mississippi, from the We Believe Digital Broadcast Studios. Our call-in number is 800-492-5186. We're being seen live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Roku TV, and on our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, where this conversations and other programs will be archived and saved for eternity, where the next generation and the generation after that will understand what we're saying. They will know what's happening to the black man back in 2022. 50 years from today, just like we understand what was happening in 1932 during the times of the Depression in America, when black folks didn't have anything, but they stood together and they band together and they worked together. They helped each other get their crops out of the field. When someone's house burned down, they came together and they helped rebuild the house. They shared in the economy. And they survived, and they acquired land, and they built schools, and they built churches. We're not doing that today. Today, we have a system that's in process and in progress that's keeping the African American in his position at the bottom. Mississippi is the poorest state in the nation, and African Americans are poorer than anywhere else in the world. 42% of the population of Jackson, Mississippi lives below the poverty line. 50% of the population of the state of Mississippi lives below the poverty line. And we continue to have elected officials that bring policies that are designed to make absolutely certain that that does not change. Make it absolute certain that that does not change. When we have policies by our state leaders that deny the expansion of Medicaid in the state of Mississippi, when Mississippi is a welfare state because we send $1 to Washington and we get $3 back every year, and if we would have expanded Medicaid, we would have spent $1 and got $5 back. But we won't do it because it's called Obamacare. That kind of idiosyncrasies continue to rule Mississippi and the South. Now, Mississippi's greatest asset is its diversity. You shouldn't be trying to exploit it and try to keep it down. You should be building it up. All economists know that if you fix the problem with those on the very bottom, that the entire state will rise. And yet we have people out there like Kim Wade on WYAB that thinks it's his job just to talk about the deficiencies of black people and say that black people are the cause of everything wrong in the world. His group of bandits over there that he calls the Christian patriots and rednecks and names like that spend most of their time every day talking about African Americans. You would think that they would have other things that they would be interested in talking about, like how do we build a nation? How do we create better schools? How do we do this? But no, the conversation is about African Americans and failed leadership. Not from the standpoint that they want to see us do better, from the standpoint that they want to encourage their base to continue to spew racism and hatred throughout Mississippi and America, to support Donald Trump and his ways and his bandits at all costs, irregardless to the lives that it impacts. And so we have enough of that going on in Mississippi. We have enough of that going on throughout this country and throughout this world. And so we're going to have to band together. So I want to take a moment and just give my Christian patriots and rednecks and Kim Wade an opportunity to learn something. If, in fact, you're concerned about the condition of Jackson, Mississippi, and you really want to see it do better, there are some things and ways that you can help. One is that you can advocate that the legislature that's ruled by Europeans institute a regional sales tax. A regional sales tax, since Caucasians moved all of their businesses out of Jackson, so black folk have nowhere to shop in Jackson, so you know now they're going to follow you over to Rankin and Madison County to the malls that you created, and they're going to spend all of the money there, and all of the sales tax dollars stay over there, while our communities back in Jackson continue to deteriorate with bad infrastructure, drinking water problems, and all the other things that come from being very, very poor. Poverty, high crime. You are creating crime when you pull all of the resources out of Jackson, Mississippi, and create this permanent underclass that Dr. Henderson talks about. And so we're going to have to call these people out. We're going to have to say, here is the problem in Mississippi. Here are the individuals that are creating and maintaining the problem so that they can benefit personally in some way. Even though Brother Kim Wade, who is African American, does not benefit in the way of the economy. It's some kind of meritorious thing that he gets from the tearing down of black people. And we got to deal with that. We got to deal with that, and we got to deal with all of the businesses that are supporting shows like that are continue to advertising and supporting shows like that, and expecting to receive black dollars to support them. We can no longer sit idly by and feed the enemy that is destroying us. We can no longer supply all of the weaponry and all of the necessary artillery to destroy us. It's crazy. And so we're seeing that happen a lot in Mississippi. Dr. Henderson, what is it that makes an African American degrade his own people?
Well, there are many reasons, but one of the most important reasons is economic insecurity and support from those that can change your economic and your personal situation of self-hatred. You mentioned a talk show host, Mr. Kim Wade. I know him well. We used to have a radio show together. Matter of fact, there were three of us, myself, a guy named Money Power, and Kim Wade. And we had a real good show on a black radio station at the time. And we had three set positions. We had a conservative, a moderate, and a liberal on that show. And we generated a lot of topics every time. And Mr. Kim Wade, at that time, was a conservative. I worked as the moderate, and Mr. Monty Powell was the liberal. Sometime we would change. I would be the liberal on certain topics, and Mr. Monty Powell would be the moderate. But we never did take the conservative situation from Mr. Wade, because he was very well versed in his knowledge and his philosophy. And we wanted to keep it that way because we wanted to appeal to all the audience. Now, that was on the black radio station. It was a very popular show. So as the years passed, Mr. Wade went his direction, I went mine, and Mr. Monty Powell went into another direction.
Well, at the end of the day, history shows that once white folk get finished with you, once they use you all up, they're going to send you back to the same ghetto to live the rest of your life for the very people that you were attacking. And so it's obvious to me that the game that's being played here, and being played very well by Mr. Wade, is the fact that he does not believe the things that he's saying. He is only using poor whites, and he is feeding them red meat to keep that base exercised, and he is doing that and profiting from that activity. Not that he believes it. So in many ways, he's a great con man. In many ways, he's selling them a good bill that they want, and he's feeding it to them, and they respond by supporting and advertising on the show. And so many businesses are calling in, and they think it's the greatest thing in the world. Where those of us over here in the African American community, they get up every morning at 6 a.m. and go to bed every night around 10 a.m. and work as hard as we can to try to build something, to try to hire our people, try to make life better for our folk, continue in that struggle. So it's disingenuous on his part because he doesn't believe what he's doing. And so when he gets through, when he finds out, or they find out that they're playing one another, then I suspect that that relationship will end. And at that point in time, black folk and Christian folk that we are will welcome them back in our community and say everything is okay.
Well, sir, now history doesn't show that. It shows that when you have an alleged anti-black person who is black, that's thrown away, denied, not wanted, and flushed back into the black community, he's not accepted. History shows in Mississippi that when they had that Socrates Commission, where the city council during the 50s and 60s propped up certain black people and had them spying on the NAACP, black churches, the Teachers Association. They had a lot of black spies that were permanent blacks in Jackson, in Hinds County, in the state of Mississippi. And they used those people to the point where they had to let them go because they started talking about integration. I'm talking about the same people they were spying on. And they turned those folks loose in the community. Some of them are still alive today. They are not respected. Most people that know them, that have read the Socrates Commission and follow that history, know exactly where they live. They know their children. They know a lot of their other relatives, and believe it or not, their children and other relatives are in civic affairs, training themselves, probably on the basis of what they get from their grandfathers and their grandmothers, to do the same thing. We are the blame for most of our situations, our serious situations, because history will show that if you build and manage and control three things, you will be able to get respect, and that is the entities of production, distribution, and exchange. You got to build something. You got to distribute something. You got to sell something. And if you have a good product, people are going to buy it. And if you're in a position where you don't do that, you're going to depend on going to others and borrowing money, for instance, to start a business. And if I had everything in my favor, I would never give you enough money to start a business where you could be prosperous. Black folks have a problem in the fact that they won't start their own banks so they can finance their businesses. The Mississippi statute is very, very liberal in starting banks and schools in this great state. Black people, and I have the stats here, black people that's 60 plus 75 years of age have more money than the average person would think, right here in Mississippi. They have more money than their children that are 18 to 64. Now, their children own, in their mind, a lot of assets. They have big homes. I mentioned this before. They have nice cars to ride in. They have kids that's in college and graduated from college and universities. All of them have a lot of debt. So you can find that those people that I mentioned, 65 to 75, 80 years old, the black folks, have more assets than their college-educated sons and daughters. So therefore, these people can't expect to succeed economically. In a few years, they're going to be sick. They're not going to ever pay those student loans off. And the government not going to ever outlaw or rescind all the student loans, because they know if you turn loose about 25 million black folks and they have some economic independence, they are going to be dangerous in America. They're going to start leaving the Democrat Party. More are going to start working with the Republicans. They're going to start additional parties. But you can neglect that idea and change it and have better progress if you start at the local level with your politics, with your economic development, and build upward. All of you builders know you cannot build a building starting at the top. You have to work that foundation first before you put anything on top of that foundation. It has to be solid. And that's why black folks are going to have to build their own economic base, create their own public and private schools, church schools, create their own banks. We're doing the research right now, and we're going to reveal it real soon. There are opportunities in Mississippi right now where they can start pooling $40 to $50 million every year and build anything they want and pay for it cash in 30 days. And that's by going through the religious denominations in the state, pooling the resources, and I guarantee you then the banks in Mississippi and the nation will start begging for black members to come and open up accounts. They will send representatives to the black churches and the black community organizations, begging them to borrow some money to build homes, to build businesses, if they start getting their money together and letting their black banks finance their institutions. So you don't have to beg to integrate with people that want to help you. That'll give them an opportunity to squeeze you more, because they're only going to give 1% out of 100% some of the things they need to be competitive. And every time a black man in the history of America has been competitive economically, he or she is always destroyed.
Destroyed.
Every time, not one time, every time.
It's Black Wall Street.
Many examples like that.
Many examples.
Many examples.
Black man begins to move forward, get a little toehold moving up, and the system turns on him immediately.
They say, for instance, we have done everything we can to destroy the black man. So we have stepped on him. We have poisoned him. We've tried to work him to death. We've tried to burn him out. We've tried to hang him. And those Negroes are still over there in corner X trying to survive, and they're doing well. We got to do something about that. Those Negroes are going to think they're real human beings. They're going to think they're real Americans. They're going to forget the fact that we hate them, and they know it, because we kept them in slavery for 500 years and semi-slavery after then up until 1966. And those Negroes got to learn that they are subservient to us. We are the white supremacists of the world, and we practice our religion very seriously, and our religion is white supremacy, and that is excluding black people, because we are a nation of Europeans, and those Negroes got to go. So we're going to have to do something to them. We know that, but still, we have these gatekeepers that won't organize, those that are in the power, that have the power base, to have a clarion call, black folks, let's get together, economically, educationally. Let's start where we are. Build our own schools. Of course you can set up deals with the public schools, with the colleges and community college, and send your black students to those institutions that have certain things that you don't have. That's through a contract, through a memorandum of understanding. But the black church got to start the training. The black community organizations got to put their children and their relatives in these institutions and use the white public schools, community college universities to do the things they need to do. And in 8 years, black folks will be number 2 again in America.
Well, black folk ought to be number 1 in a city like Jackson.
They should have been number 1 a long time ago with the power they don't have because of those reasons that I mentioned.
Over $1 billion flows through the hands of African American leadership. The Jackson public schools with a budget of $350 million, City of Jackson with $350 million, Hinds County at $300 million, the Airport Authority with another $300 million. Over $1 billion controlled by black people, and the quality of life and black businesses are being destroyed every day in this environment. So not only is the attack real from the enemy, who has a real logical reason for trying to keep the black man down so they keep himself up, but the strategy is being carried out by African American leadership in this black city and in this black nation across the country, because black folk don't do well where there are a lot of black people. Dr. Henderson, we are going to go to a station break. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. We'll be right back.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippilink.com and click on Home Delivery.
Hi, I'm Q Talicia Garrett. I am here to introduce our New South Development and Training Outreach Hour every Tuesday at 2 p.m., giving you information on how to become a part of the programs through USDA and Farm Service Agency. We can be reached at 678-779-9468. We can also be found online at newsouthoutreach.com.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from Jackson, Mississippi. No, we're in tough times down here in Jackson, Mississippi when it comes to African Americans. In this show, we've been talking about the ills and the causes of the conditions that we're in. You know, we're currently ranked number 1 when it comes to murder in a city, the murder capital of the world. Over 154 homicides last year, over 75 homicides so far this year. And that's not the nature of black folk. It's not the nature of black folk to kill one another in that way. There's some sinister going on in this country and in our communities. And I just told Dr. Henderson that over $1 billion flows through the hands of African American elected officials, where they have the majority and the power and the ability to make change. And the black community and the black business community continues to be diminished and suffers and is on its way out of business.
Well, see, that's the problem, Mr. Garrett. Even though the black institutions, you name those 4 institutions, control $1 billion, it doesn't make any difference who controls the money. The difference is who can spend the money and where they spend it. There is not one area in these 4 areas of opportunity, the airport, county supervised city of Jackson, and the public school system, where the black people can make the final decision. Even though the airport has a majority black group of board of directors, public schools the same, the city the same, and the county has 100% black group that make decisions on the spending. But you cannot have that ability if you don't control the money. First of all, the money is in white banks. The white banks control the county leaders, the city leaders, the airport authority, and others through their associations. They put 1 or 2 of them on their board of directors, and that money automatically goes to these white banks. If you don't believe it, do the research and find out how much money going to the 1 1/2 black banks that's in Mississippi. You'll be surprised. You might not be surprised. Then when it comes to spending the money, you look at the people that make a decision on who is going to get it. It won't be folks like you. Those people that have that final word on how this money is going to be spent, this $1 billion, they already have a list of contractors that know they're going to get 95% of that money because it's usually voted on by the special interest groups that control the politicians. Politicians are not independent. They're always obligated to someone, always, and it's not the voters.
Well, it couldn't be more evident than the situation we have right here in Jackson, Mississippi. We have an African-American firm that was the low bidder on a garbage collection contract here in the city of Jackson. $1.2 million savings annually on a 10-year contract, over $12 million savings. A European firm had the contract for over 35 years, waste management. These Negroes on our city council will not approve the mayor's recommendation to award that contract to an African-American firm, even after he's proved that he can do the job because he's been running in our city for the past 90 days under emergency contract. These Negroes will still not give an African American an opportunity to build a business and grow. Dr. Henderson, I believe we have a call. Hold on a second, call. Okay, Dr. Henderson is ready. You're on the air, caller.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can barely hear you. Said on the air?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. How y'all doing?
We're doing fine, sir.
Good. So I was reading the article with a friend, Black Enterprise. This week it talks about the state of 3 demographic banks. The African American bank, the Latino banks, and the Asian bank. And it gave a little breakdown, a few metrics. In the African American bank, I think it's about 19 of them nationwide. We lost quite a few due to COVID, but right now there's about 19 nationwide. And the total assets for all 19 of those banks were around $7 billion. The Latino banks, there was about 33 of them nationwide, and their assets were a little bit over $100 billion, about $116 billion. And then the Asian banks, there was 77 nationwide, and the total assets was about $172 billion. And so the article was just saying, looking at the black banks, how we compare, and then of course, they didn't even mention the other demographics, the white banks. but just saying how how small our assets were for those 19 banks compared to other similar, demographics similar to African Americans. But it just brought out the point that you're making, that you have to support minorities, and people don't get the picture, the big picture. It's about giving minorities an opportunity to control their economic destiny, their college contract. And if the minority gets the contract, then they'll be able to support banks. They'll be able to support other businesses, buying diesel, buying tires, giving minorities management jobs, accounting, and all type of things. And so I just appreciate y'all. So, and Brother Garrett, you're right on giving us the evidence. Keep up the good work. Keep beating the drum. And, you have a lot of people there. You have a lot of support. So enjoy your show.
Thank you so much, caller.
Thank you.
The caller brings out some interesting information. It's heartbreaking to even hear what the caller was saying and the statistics that he gave. The caller said that there are about 19 black banks in this country, Dr. Henderson.
19. That's about right.
Only 19.
But now the bad news about this, these are not 100% black banks. They have a black majority as owners. A lot of these banks are financed by some of this 800 European that have over $7 billion themselves. They have board of directors that decide how the money is spent. And many times the person that is the largest stockholder is not the black person individually. They might have a majority of the stock, but the white person that's on the board or his friends own the majority of the stock. This one white person might own 25% of the stock, and therefore he makes the final decision.
Doc, let me ask you about that. The deal here is that the state of Mississippi doesn't put any money in black banks.
They don't have to.
The city of Jackson doesn't put any money in black banks.
They don't have to.
The county doesn't put any money in black banks.
They do not have to do it.
The school system doesn't put any money in black banks.
They do not have to do that. Nor do they really, seriously want to do it, and I can understand it. If you look at the political power of a person that controls the money, you find that is a tremendous responsibility. And all of you know, if you are in politics or any black leadership, when you make a decision that's going to counter what you're supposed to do, you are going to be reluctant to make it. Even though secretly, a lot of these black politicians and others want to give money to the black banks so they can make interest, so they can loan it to black people. But they are afraid to do it because they know they're going to have a challenge at the next election. The black preachers are supposed to do the same. Most of them that are high-powered black preachers are afraid to talk about black issues, especially economics. And talking about economic independence, they're not going to do it, nor are they going to promote it in the church.
Why are they afraid to talk about economic empowerment of black people?
Because they don't have to do it, because they have a semblance of economic security themselves, and they want to keep it that way. That is bad, but that's the way it is. They'll lose their status in the community of white folks. They know that certain European Americans not going to call them and get the pulse of the black community. That was very hot with preachers up until today, when black folks start rising economically, politically, socially. The white conservatives always have a few black preachers, black corporate leaders, and black politicians that they can call to see what direction they need to go into.
Well, Doc, Hispanics, the caller said, has 33 banks with $100 billion. I had no idea that Hispanics had moved that far ahead of African Americans in this country.
They did it in less than 10 years. They had over 800% increase in Hispanic population in America in the last 30 years. Now they have over 100,000 coming in every month. Just free, just walk on in here. And they put on a plane and sent to Iowa, New York City and other places and say, we're going to give you a little card and we want you to come back for hearing in
Well,
6
that'll
months.
be good on that, but how are they able to put their money to amass $100 billion in the financial institution? What makes them work together when black people have been here forever and a day have only 19 banks and only $7 billion?
Well, the black folks have been taught to hate each other.
Wow.
Hispanics have been taught family. They base their resources on families and individuals. So they're going to eat similar food, go to a similar church. Most of them are Catholics. They're going to work hard. They're going to pool their resources because they know that they are not loved either by the European Americans. So they got this economic clout, so you can find a Hispanic. He can come here to America, can speak 2 words of English. 5 years later, he can speak enough English to go down to his bank, borrow some money, and become a contractor. That's the way they do it.
And the caller said that the Asians have 77 banks with $172 billion.
That's right. And that's
I don't even know if we have any Asians in Mississippi.
well, you never know it because you don't see them unless you go to certain places. That's why they don't have to protest. Asians use a strategy that I've been telling black folks they ought to use forever. You don't go and march and shout and protest and sit in and threaten to burn things down. You finance the preachers and the politicians. You call meetings when you have someone running for the city council, the sheriff, the board of aldermen, the supervisors. Have your leader meet with them and say, this is your platform. This is what we need you to do for us. How can we help you in your campaign? Now, you're going to deal with me only if you have any problem with my people. And they buy them just like that. And it's legal, sir. It's legal. We call it campaign financial support.
This is Socrates Garrett Live. We've run out of time. It's a very, very serious matter. And somebody's got to bring it to the attention of the general public as to what the hell is going on out here. Fortunately or unfortunate, Dr. Henderson and I are willing to take that message and take that and bring it to you. We need your support. Take a look at our website, donate to our platform, share our content, call into our station, put programs of similar interest on this podcast studio. That's what's going to make a difference. We can make inroads if we start taking care of ourselves, black people. We can't let others take all of the resources to them for themselves. It's the problem in the world today that America, which is probably 30% of the world's population, if that much, Doc, controls and uses over 80% of the world's resources. African Americans, 40% of the populations of the state of Mississippi gets less than 2% of the resources from the state of Mississippi. Black folk, you can't make it this way. We got to wake up. We got to pull together. Got to stop hating one another. We got to give contracts to each other. We got to defend one another. If we don't do that, Dr. Henderson says, we'll become extinct and will no longer be a viable race in America. This has been Socrates Garrett Live. Until next week, Stay safe and have a great weekend.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.